or test? I'm going to go into test. You know if you're in production or test by looking at your username down here in the corner. So it's an important little thing. Don't accidentally be in production if you think you're in test. Just check your username. Right. Anyway, so Fix administration. This is the test environment now. So this one up here is Fix administration. So if I open that up, when you first log into Iris, or when you first log into Iris from a different machine, you won't have this list. This is a list that you're going to have to add manually on each computer that you use. It's easy enough, you know, once you've got the list to add the fix engines. You add the fix engine by clicking on this and typing in the name of the fix engine. So someone will have a list of fix engines that you can add. To give someone access to a fix engine, which is something that often comes up, you do right-click off the engine and modify user access list. So this is the list of users who have access to this engine. So we just gave Marcus access to iOS Plus, so we give him access to the fix engine by doing this, add, and like that. So now when Marcus tries to add that engine via this window, he will have permission. So fix administration as such, you've obviously got a number of sessions here. Generally speaking, we're going to be most interested in this engine here. This is where the CST2 and CST beta orders come in. It's got two configured sessions, which you can see if you go down a little bit. It's got two configured sessions here. So this session here is for receiving orders from CST2, and this session here is for receiving orders from CST beta. I'm aware that the naming conventions are less than ideal, but that's what they are. Iris have to set them up. If you want a new session, you have to ask Iris. The only things that we really have permission to do is set up things like account mappings. So to get to an account mapping, you right click off the engine and you select Fix Accounts. So the Fix Account window is this one, it pops up. So this will allow you to add default accounts and mapped accounts to this engine. So you can see it's got some important kind of bits here. The iOS name means that this engine is connected to CSO-TST7. The user is actually set up in the iOS Plus user administration. So if you go into the iOS Plus user administration and search for fix.algo, you'll find that user and it'll have certain permissions associated to it. So it'll have access to certain accounts and certain destinations, and all that's important for making sure that when you send orders into this engine, that this user is actually able to create those orders in iOS Plus. So if you need to modify those iOS details, you just do right-click modify. You can update things like the password. You can change the user, and so on and so forth. To add accounts, you do right-click, add account. This is the window that pops up. So you will, generally speaking, be sending an account in the fix message. So generally tag 1, possibly 6802, 7550. We send accounts in various fields. But what you're trying to do is tell iOS Plus that depending on the value that you send in the fix message, you want it to create an order in a particular account. So if you were, for instance, to send, let's say, CST, I don't know, 6 in tag 1, that means you want iOS to create the order in account CST6 in iOS Plus. They don't have to match. Like if you were to say that you're going to send 1, 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, whatever in fix, and you wanted to create an account in CST6, that's fine. It's basically just a mapping. So I don't need to create that. But when you create that, it'll pop up here. The default means that every order that's not otherwise got a mapping will get created in this default account. So if we were to send an order through for anything other than CST8_A, it would appear in the Algo Beta account. So easy enough to add mappings. A lot of the time we'll have issues in production where orders are rejected because there's no default set and they're not set up as individual accounts. We had an issue in production where one of the traders was trying to find an order to a trade to cancel, and he wasn't aware that it was appearing in the Algo beta account instead of the account that he thought he was creating the algo in. So obviously when you create the algo, you create it in Iris. If you create the order in, I think he was using CST2, when it flows through Apama adds _A to that cross-reference, so you end up with CST2 _A. So he thought that he would be able to find his child orders in CST2 _A, but he wasn't, because CST2 _A wasn't set up on the engine. Everything was flowing into Algo beta, which meant that when he was searching for his trades, he couldn't find them because he wasn't aware of how that mapping was working. It's not really a bug per se, it's just a limitation. You know, it was badly configured. And to be honest, it's a problem for production support rather than it is for us, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. The other sort of administration that you can do in Fix is, if we go right click, Fix Client Settings, you get a whole bunch of options in here, like seriously huge number of options. If you do right click off one of these sessions and do Modify Client Settings, you'll get this window, and it's just got a huge number of different types of settings that you can set based upon what you want your orders to do. I would suggest that generally you're probably best talking to Iris about this stuff. The one that's probably going to be the most relevant is this destination handling here in the version specific. So this has all got to do with what we send in tag 100 from Apama. So I've often asked, you know, to change what we're sending in tag 100, and I do that because when the order gets received in this Fix engine, I want it to be routed in the right way. So by setting tag 100 in Apama, I can control where that order gets created in iOS Plus based upon this setting. So what it's saying is that if tag 100 is available in the Fix message and is valid, then it will create the order in the destination that you specify in tag 100. If it's not valid or if it's not available, then you can specify a default destination. So that I control what Apama does with messages in iOS Plus by using tag 100 quite a lot. Other than that, look, I probably wouldn't even go there, is the truth of it. There's a whole bunch of settings here that you can control. This one is possibly the only other vaguely important one. So I talked about how the account mappings work. So the account mappings work based on the tag that you define here. So if you say that it should be expecting account in tag 6802, that's where it'll look. If you say, you know, look for account in tag 7550, then that's where it'll look. If you say tag 1, then that's where it'll look. That's all it is. It's pretty straightforward. Depending on where Apama or the originating system decides to put the account values, it depends on what you put in this field. So that's really all you can do from the front end with Fix. The rest of it's all on the Iris side. So Iris will have a whole bunch of back-end mappings that they can maintain that we can't see. So when I talk about adding mappings to Fix engines, what I'm doing is getting Iris to add those mappings. They can provide us with an extract, so I can show you an example of what an extract looks like. So just excuse me for a moment. This is probably an okay one. Ugh. That wasn't a very nice way of looking at it, was it? I'll open it in a browser. It'll look a bit better. So this is an example of mappings that are applied in Iris and that they maintain based on our instructions. So you can see that there's a whole bunch of stuff in here for tag 18. So what you're reading is, what this means is that source tag value equals CST1 _A in tag 6802. So that means that the fix engine is looking at 6802, finding the value of CST1_A, and when it finds it, it's populating tag 18 with a value of A. So there's lots of them, but it's obviously not all tag 18. You can do that for any tag. Same basic principle though. If tag 207 equals AX, then the value in tag 207 is deleted. Iris can kind of talk through more about what all these mappings mean, but it's just a way of
chair's gone.
It's just a way of controlling what you're like, of manipulating what your fixed messages is looking like when they're coming into Iris. So you could also map. You can map execution instructions to fixed tags and fixed tags to execution instructions. So these are a little bit harder to read, but generally speaking, what they're trying to say is that the value in execution instruction this, which honestly you'd have to look in Iris to figure out which execution instruction that was referring to, should be put into tag 6910, and so on and so forth. So this one down here, WTC, is execution instruction wash trade code, so the value of that can go into 8502. So that's kind of what I'm talking about when I talk about fixed mappings. It can be quite hard to know how a fixed mapping is affecting your orders unless you asked for it to go in there in the first place. Other than that, you really kind of, what you're doing is you're identifying that something has flowed into Iris that you weren't expecting. So it's where you might find a discrepancy between the order, the fixed log in Apama and the fixed log in Iris. If there's some kind of a discrepancy there, then generally speaking what's happened is a fixed mapping has been applied. And so when that happens, then you have to kind of go back to Iris and say, please explain. So that's all I can really tell you about fixed mappings without knowing the detail of what we're looking for. So.